Sometimes it takes a child's voice, soft, steady, and heartbreakingly sincere, to awaken something buried deep within us. In the glow of city lights and the shadow of corporate towers, a wealthy businessman stumbles upon a moment so pure, it shatters his perception of success. All she asked for was milk. But what he gave changed everything. This is not just a story of generosity, it's a story about dignity, invisible lives, and the unexpected power of love in its simplest form. Let us begin. Sir, please? I just need some milk for my little brother. I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up. The words weren't loud, but they sliced through the silence of the night like a blade. David Thornton, a man who owned more companies than he could count, stopped mid-step. He had just left yet another fruitless investor meeting, still lost in calculations and profit margins. But the voice, delicate, clear, and oddly composed, pulled him out of his world. There she stood. A 6-year-old black girl, no taller than his briefcase, clutching a baby wrapped in threadbare blankets. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was offering a deal, simple, earnest, dignified. In that instant, David wasn't looking at a poor child. He was looking at a negotiator, a sister, a protector. And something inside him shifted. Without fully knowing why, he crouched to her level. "What's your name?" "Destiny," she said. "And this is Malik." That was the moment, the precise second a multimillionaire's world began to unravel. Not through loss, but through a quiet, piercing encounter with courage in its smallest, most unexpected form. She didn't flinch at the cold. She didn't cower from the silence. She stood still, holding her baby brother like a priceless treasure, and she waited for an answer. David hadn't stepped into a grocery store in years. Not like this. Not to buy milk. He walked beside her, not as a man of wealth, but as a man, curious, disarmed. As they stepped inside the dimly lit market, the cashier barely glanced at them. "Milk, please," Destiny said, her small voice steady. David reached for a gallon, then hesitated. His hand moved again, this time grabbing diapers, fruit, baby food. Destiny's wide eyes didn't show gratitude. They showed concern. "That's too much, sir," she whispered. "I can't pay for all that." David smiled. But it wasn't the smile of pity, it was the smile of someone seeing himself in a mirror he never knew existed. "Consider it a long-term investment," he replied. As they walked together, she led him through unfamiliar streets. 2 blocks later, she pointed to a narrow alley swallowed in darkness. "This is it. Thank you, Mr. David. I'll pay you back someday." Then she was gone, vanishing into the shadows with her brother and the groceries. But David stood frozen, the weight of something unshakable settling on his shoulders. What had just happened wasn't charity. It was an unspoken agreement. And somehow he knew, this wasn't over. Some debts are never meant to be repaid in dollars, but in truth, in dignity, in being seen. David didn't sleep that night. The image of that little girl, calm, composed, responsible beyond her years, haunted him. She hadn't begged. She'd negotiated. And she had vanished into the darkness like a secret the city itself had forgotten. At dawn he returned. Not in a suit. Not as a CEO. Just as a man following a feeling he couldn't explain. He saw her again, Destiny curled beside her baby brother under a highway overpass. The cardboard, the torn blanket, the young woman lying nearby, barely conscious. This was home. And in that moment, something shattered within him. He wasn't looking at the homeless. He wasn't witnessing poverty. He was witnessing resilience wrapped in injustice. A 6-year-old holding up the sky for everyone around her. The young woman opened her eyes, Grace, Destiny's mother. She was wary. Her voice trembled as she explained their story. Evicted unfairly, ignored by the system, surviving on scraps and faith. "We're not lazy," she whispered. "We just stopped existing to people who could help." David said nothing. He only knelt, gently placed fresh groceries beside her, and promised quietly, "You're not invisible to me." He had built billion-dollar systems. But standing beneath that overpass, he realized, it was time to dismantle a much darker one. Some wounds don't bleed. They bury themselves deep in the paperwork, in silence, in the spaces where help never arrives. David began returning to the overpass each morning, not with charity but with consistency. He brought groceries, children's books, warm words. And Destiny? She greeted him with the same poise each time, telling stories of found treasures. A chipped teacup, a plastic bracelet, a damp fairy tale book she was trying to read aloud to Malik. One day he asked gently, "Can you read?" Destiny nodded shyly. "A little. Mommy taught me, before she got sick." So David brought books. Not just stories, but possibilities. She devoured them. Read to Malik with hope in her voice, as if trying to read them into a new world. One morning she paused and asked, "Mr. David, why do you help us? Everyone else pretends we don't exist." The question pierced deeper than any boardroom challenge. David knelt beside her. "Because you love each other. Because you're strong in ways most people never learn to be. And because I have more money than I know what to do with, but not what you have." She tilted her head. "What do I have?" "Family," he said. "The kind you fight for." Destiny smiled. "Then maybe we can be your family too." And just like that, a businessman with $200 million realized he had finally been offered something he'd never earned, a place to belong. It wasn't a storm that shattered their peace. It was a uniform. A voice that wielded authority like a weapon. 3 weeks into their fragile routine, David arrived earlier than usual. He expected to find Destiny reading to Malik or Grace organizing their belongings, but what he saw instead stopped him cold. 2 officers were dousing their makeshift bedding with ice water. A third barked orders with unmistakable cruelty. Grace shielded Malik with trembling arms while Destiny scrambled to save the books David had given her, each one soaked, pages curling like wilted petals. "I told you bums to get out," the officer growled. "You're breaking the law by existing here." David stayed hidden, his fists clenched. He watched as Grace, shivering and sick, tried to reason with them. "Please, just a few more days." But kindness had no home in Officer Mitchell's tone. He laughed. A sound that didn't belong to a man but to a system designed to dehumanize. "A few more days? You've had months. Maybe I should call child services, split you all up. That'll fix it." Destiny, all of 6 years old, stepped forward. Her voice shook but her gaze held steady. "We're not bums. We're a family." Mitchell leaned in with mock sweetness. "You know what happens to smart little girls? They get taken far, far away from their mommies." That was the moment David realized. This wasn't just poverty. It was persecution. When the officers left, Grace collapsed to her knees, whispering, "He comes twice a week. Same threats. Same violence. We're not just poor, we're targets." David didn't say a word. But inside, a cold clarity was forming. This wasn't a one-time cruelty. This was a pattern. A plan. A war against the invisible. And David Thornton was about to become the most dangerous weapon the system had never seen coming. Sometimes, silence is not peace, it's the calm before precision strikes. That very afternoon, David canceled all meetings. His mind no longer belonged to quarterly projections. It belonged to Destiny, to Grace, to Malik. And to the system that had dared threaten them. He picked up the phone, not to call another CO, but to summon warriors. Victoria Chun, a civil rights attorney known for dismantling police departments one affidavit at a time. And Marcus Rodriguez, a former detective turned private investigator, fluent in the language of hidden files and institutional rot. When David told them what had happened, he expected shock. But Marcus simply nodded. "It's textbook," he said. "Evict the vulnerable, label them undesirable, let real estate developers buy up cheap land. The police aren't just tools, they're assets in a much larger game." David's jaw tightened. "And Mitchell? A pawn with a badge. He gets bonuses for every voluntary relocation. You're not the first to witness this. But you might be the first with the power to end it." David stared out the window of his high-rise office, the city sprawling below. He saw it differently now, not as opportunity but as evidence. A city built on buried stories and families like Destiny's forced to live beneath its glow. That night, Destiny didn't run to greet him. She simply waved, her joy dampened by fear. "Mr. David," she whispered, "Mom says we may have to leave. The man in uniform says they'll take me and Malik far away." David crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Do you trust me?" Destiny nodded. "Yes." "Then believe me when I say, no one will ever take you from your mother." Behind her, Grace watched silently. Her eyes, once wary, now held something new. Not hope. Not yet. But the first flicker of belief, that perhaps, just maybe, this time, someone would fight for them. When the powerful prey on the powerless, they never expect one of them to have a lion watching. The following morning, David awoke with a quiet, steady fire in his chest. There were no doubts, no hesitation. Only purpose. At precisely 7 a.m., Victoria Chun stepped into his office, holding 3 heavy folders, each one a nail in Officer Mitchell's professional coffin. "We got more than we ever expected," she said grimly, laying out documents like weapons. Surveillance footage. WhatsApp screenshots. bonus payment records. And then the most chilling discovery, Mitchell and several officers openly betting on how many families they could clear out each week. One message referred to children as premium products. One of them was destiny. David went still. The rage inside him turned cold. Focused. This isn't just corruption, Marcus added. This is organized human trafficking. State-sponsored. Shielded by uniforms. Victoria looked David in the eye. We have enough to bring down the whole department. But you said you wanted something personal. David's voice was low but absolute. I don't want Mitchell suspended. I want him remembered as the man who thought he could destroy a family and ended up destroying himself. That same day, Officer Mitchell made one final mistake. He returned to the overpass with a smug smirk and a fake social worker in tow, papers in hand to separate Destiny from her mother. But what Mitchell didn't know was that every step he took, every word he spoke, every sneer, every lie, was being recorded in high definition by hidden cameras David had installed the night before. Because this time, the hunted had a guardian. And this time the truth wouldn't just come to light, it would burn everything corrupt with it. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin not with grand gestures, but with a simple, trembling voice asking for milk. David Thornton thought he had everything, wealth, success, prestige. But none of it had ever made him feel needed. Until Destiny, with her tattered blanket and fierce little eyes, reminded him what real value was. This story wasn't just about a millionaire saving a family. It was about a little girl saving a man's soul. About justice rising not with vengeance, but with dignity. Because when you protect those who have nothing, you discover something priceless. A chosen family. A purpose worth every penny. And a legacy not built on empires, but on love. And sometimes, the smallest voices are the ones that echo the loudest.